Journeys Ahead. Expanded Universe. T. The Matterbirth. Chapter 3. From Whispers to Screams. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Trying his best to get some shut-eye, T awkwardly laid in a bed within the mighty vessel that had descended from the darkness. A storm began to violently rage from outside, becoming a furious symphony of wind and rain, all of it battering against a small, upside-down triangle window behind the mechanic. A low, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the small room that he was trying to rest within, a constant reminder of the advanced technology that surrounded the one with fluffy blue hair. The air hung thick with a hospital-like scent that T didn't really like. This was one of the many reasons for the lack of shut-eye. A violent clap of thunder reverberated through the vessel, followed by a shaking that rattled the very bones of the structure. Engines, he presumed. He stirred in his attempt at sleep, a groan escaping his lips as he slowly opened his eyes. A dim, white ceiling blurred in the focus, punctuated by fleeting streaks of gray and purple lightning that illuminated the cramped space. For a desperate moment, he clung to the hope that the events of the previous hours, the unsettling events and the strange rune on his hand, the overwhelming sense of displacement, all of it, had all been a nightmare. A cruel fabrication born from a troubled mind. But alas, the cold, sterile reality of his surroundings quickly shattered that illusion. This was not his room. This was not Illinois. This was the unknown. T laid there, fatigued and aching. Raising his hand, he instinctively looked for the faint, shimmering mark where the upside-down rune had emanated through his glove. Finding nothing, he registered that he was no longer wearing his familiar clothes, but instead was clad in a plain blue t-shirt and long white pants. The bed beneath him was also pristine white, adding to the overwhelming sense of clinical emptiness. A tall, wide closet rested within the right wall, while the floor and the nightstand beside the bed were a polished, cool gray. Everything felt cold, impersonal, devoid of warmth. He pushed himself up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. As he did so, his gaze fell upon his hat, resting on the nightstand. The same old, matted blue hat. A sigh escaped T's lips as he reached out, his fingers closing around the familiar fabric. He then plopped it onto his head, positioning it carefully over his fluffy blue hair before rubbing his tired eyes. "Jet," he called out, his voice raspy from the lack of sleep. Silence. Jet wasn't in the room. "Jet," he repeated, louder this time. Suddenly, with a soft hiss, the door to his room slid upwards into the upper frame, disappearing completely from view. Startled, T snapped his head towards the doorway, his eyes wide with surprise. Then, a flicker of recognition, followed by a wave of calmness, washed over him. Standing in the doorway was Jida. She too was dressed in casual attire, mirroring his own simpler look. White pants, similar to his, were paired with a bright orange tank top that emphasized her broad and freckled shoulders. Her arms, T realized, were slightly muscular, fit and healthy. Her hair was now braided neatly as opposed to earlier, and without the heavy armor she had worn previously, T noticed a bright blue necklace dangling around her throat, one with that triangle shape once again. In her hands, she carried a tray filled with unfamiliar food. Blue bread, a strange purple apple, and a slice of unknown meat that emanated a surprisingly appetizing aroma. "Hey, sorry to bother you," Jada greeted with a warm smile that matched her eyes. "I wanted to see if you were hungry." She shuffled into the room, her movements fluid and graceful. For a moment, T was speechless, his mind struggling to catch up by her sheer beauty. It was then he finally managed to stammer out sure, I mean... He now watched as she approached the bed, her presence somehow both comforting and even a little intimidating at the same time. "May I sit?" Jada asked, her voice gentle, a stark contrast to her previous tone. "You may. Jada, right?" T asked, his eyes following her as she lowered herself gracefully onto the edge of the bed beside him. The difference in their heights was striking. "Yeah, T said, correct?" Jada replied, placing the tray carefully between them. "Yeah, thanks," T whispered, reaching for the food with hesitant fingers. "Of course. How are you feeling? I understand that this is..." Jada began, but her words trailed off as she saw the nervous, almost overwhelmed expression on T's face. "A lot," she finished, gently resting a hand on his shoulder. Yeah, it's..." T stammered, his gaze flickering back towards the nightstand as if searching for something. "Where's my phone?" he asked, his voice laced with anxiety. "Your phone? Oh, Jet? He's with Knock and Cot. Said something about wanting to hang out with fellow robots. He's okay," Jada assured him, her eyes meeting his with sincerity. "Oh, okay." T tried to speak, but his voice faltered, and he trailed off in the silence. "Sorry, this is..." He struggled to find the right words, prompting Jada to gently rub his shoulder. "You don't need to apologize for anything. You're confused, worried. I get that. More than you know," Jada said softly, her voice filled with empathy. "Do you? Lady, I don't know what's going on. You've only given me mere snippets of what I've been asking for several hours now." T burst out finally, his voice rising in frustration. He turned his gaze towards the storm-ravaged window, a deep sadness etched on his face. "You said I had come home. You're all looking at me like I'm a walking corpse. Please," he exclaimed, rubbing his eyes. "I just want answers." Jada sat there, her gaze fixed on the food now beginning to cool. Deliberately, she reached out and picked up a piece of the meat that resembled a blue strip of bacon. She plopped it into her mouth, chewing thoughtfully before swallowing. After a moment, she nodded her head, a subtle gesture of approval. She then moved the tray aside, clearing the space between them. "I have questions too, T. Yours are far grander than ours," Jada replied, her tone serious. Moving with a fluid grace, she shifted her position until she was standing in front of him, crouching down to meet his gaze. "Would you care to walk with me?" she asked, taking his hands in hers. Her touch was surprisingly warm and firm. "Please?" She followed up with a gentle smile. Hesitation warred with a burning need for answers in T's heart. But he finally nodded slowly and stood up. Jada's grip on his hands was firm and warm, tender and caring, a stark contrast to the fierce warrior she had presented herself as earlier. "Where are we going?" T asked as Jada now held his right hand with her left. "To the briefing room. We would normally do these kinds of things at HQ, but we're still about a day away," Jada explained as she guided T towards the door and out of the room. "HQ?" T asked as him and Jada entered a rounded hallway. His eyes winced. Warm blue, yellow, and pink lights surged throughout the interior of the walls, a stark contrast to the cold, white steel of the room they had just left. These walls were intricately designed with runes in ancient languages, reminiscent of the strange egg pod that T had emerged from. The air was still filled with the soft hum of engines, now conjoined with the gentle murmur of conversations from the various passengers who wandered about. T's eyes widened as he took in the sights and sounds of the bustling hallway. There were people of all shapes and sizes, each with their own unique features and styles. Some looked like hyper-advanced soldiers, clad in sleek armor and carrying futuristic weapons, while others wore casual attires that seemed almost mundane in comparison. They were all weird humanoid creatures, all with large eyes, multicolored skin, elf-like ears, and amazing hairstyles that seemed to defy the normalcy of what he was used to back on Earth. As T and Jida walked along the hallway, the passengers couldn't help but stare at the young man. Gasps and odd expressions were exchanged, and T felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. "Again, what's with the stairs?" he whispered, shying away beside Jida. "By the stars, it's him," a man said nearby, dropping his food while his eyes opened wide with wonder. "I thought it was a joke," a woman then mumbled. T tried to ask Jida why everyone was staring at him again, but before he could get another word out, they suddenly entered a large room. The futuristic high-tech interior was a command center filled to the brim with people. In its center was a large, glowing blue sphere hologram that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. The room fell silent as T and Jida entered, all eyes turned to the young man. T's jaw dropped as he took in the sheer scale of the room and the number of people gathered within it. He saw familiar faces, Lee, Nock, Kot, and Jet, who was being carried by Kot in his noodle-like arms. Jet immediately broke the silence, his voice booming across the room.
"Ah, hello, my creator. Welcome to the briefing room."
The occupants of the room backed up, wide-eyed as Jida let go of T's hand and marched to the center of the station. T stood there, stunned. "Jida, why are they?" T asked once again. "They're staring because this reaction is natural," she said. T stood there, stunlocked by everyone's gaze, as Jida continued. "But what isn't natural is how you just suddenly showed up again after all this time." She went on before asking, "Do you know anything about matter births, T?" She asked, leaning back against the rail of the main station's hologram piece. T held still to the question. A what?" he replied, causing a small murmur from the crowd, most of which concerned. "You don't know that you're royalty?" A large, insectoid being spoke up, its voice laced like a gentle breeze. "You don't know?" A woman with sharp features and a sharp-toned attitude said. "Hey, easy, both of you. He was banished as a baby. The likelihood was slim." Jida snapped, making T's eyes dart. "Wait, what?" he asked, taking a step forwards. "Royalty? Banished?" he beckoned. Slowly, Jida approached T again, taking hold of his hands in hers, their touch warm and soothing with the rising cold. "Yes. T, the reason everyone is staring at you is because you are very important." Jida's breaths and words were uneasy, shaky, making T catch his breath. She was nervous. He could sense it, even when he himself felt like crumbling. "You are a being known as a matter birth, a soul who is meant to watch over this world, to watch over us. But," Jida explained, her words trailing off as she took note of T's baffled stare. 22 years ago, when you were summoned to this world, our current ruler, the Emperor, he casted you away. He sent you to wherever you were before today's events." T's jaw dropped further, before clenching with a sense of unease. What do you mean? Summoned? Cast it away? He asked as Jida tried to figure out her next words. Yes. You see, every 1,000,000 years, a matter birth is summoned forth from the stars. Jida began anew as the spherical hologram changed into that crest symbol, illuminating the room into a mix of blue to gold shading. This 1,000,000-year event is brought upon as our energy essence, light and dark matter, are fused from the great beyond. But in that process, the current matter birth must sacrifice their essence to the newborn to pass the torch of royalty. Jida revealed to T's bewilderment as the crest shape split into a dark and light half, the point representing some kind of unity. The matter birth is meant to keep the light and dark of this dimension in balance, which then flows out to the other worlds that reside within the multiverse. Jida stated, making T take a small step back. The what? T asked while adjusting his cap. It was a small tick for him, a motion he only did when nervous. Our home, your home, the Matter Realm, Salvaheim as we call it. This is your domain to process this life essence. The Matterbirths do not simply rule as a leader, but as a god or goddess of the light and dark. T, you're a deity in a repairman's cap. T couldn't speak. His mind was numb as he caught the faces of those looking upon him with so many emotions. That's what you were born for. But our current ruler, or I should say dictator, didn't want that. Jida and T locked eyes once again, as the image behind them changed to that of the Emperor. As T laid his eyes upon his grotesque form, his eyes widened, shocked by how similar he looked to himself. The current ruler? T asked gently. His name is Core Matter, your older brother. Jida dropped the bombshell that caused an audible shaken breath to leave T. He didn't want you replacing him. Let's just say out of all the Matterbirths, Core is the most egotistical. The image swiftly changed to several political rallies of the world, each one looking more grim than the last. Power and ambition got to his head. Although he did keep the balance for a time, he wasn't as peaceful as those that came before. When your arrival was imminent, his tyranny fully consumed him. Jida went on as the image changed to the first signs of war. He made a vow to never leave the throne, even though many of us protested. Core, he got his way. He not only ditched his Matterbirth code, he fully embraced solely dark matter, creating a new order and an army known as the Ameliorites. Jida went on with sorrow and a shaken hand that gestured towards the images. He's forced people to bend to his will. He's burnt cities to the ground. He and his family, they're sick. His generals and enforcers, damn monsters. He's wiped the light from so many souls. Jida went on as tears began to well in her eyes. Friends and family we all knew soon became enemies. One side leaned towards different paths, leading us to the Great Matter Civil War. Jida stated, gesturing to all the hardened fighters that nodded their heads. We who rebelled on that fateful day were forced to watch as you, a sweet and innocent baby, was casted into the unknown regions of reality with no means of being able to find you. Jida said, taking a step towards T, who was looking to have an internal identity crisis. Since that day, we, the rebels, the dyads as we've dubbed ourselves, have been fighting to take Core down and restore balance to what was once a beautiful world. Jida then looked down, as the last few years looked to melt within her tears. My father once led this rebellion, but he died to a once trusted hand, leaving it to me to lead the charge. Jida sadly revealed as she locked eyes with T once again. If Core takes us out, he'll go on to destroy everything. He'll finish this world off and go to the next, claiming everything for himself and enacting his blinded view of a peaceful future. The two of them were nearly touching foreheads, while the crowd nodded. But now that you're here, now that you've returned, we can reclaim what's rightfully ours. You could help us win this war. You could restore balance for all of us. Jada then exclaimed as irrational thinking was replaced with a desperate excitement. You could win the war! T's heart felt like it was going to burst, his mind reeling with the weight of what he had been told. He felt like he was being pulled apart, his sense of identity feeling both assembled and shattered time and time again by the revelation that he was a matter birth, a being of light and dark, meant to rule over the realm. Whatever that meant, he thought inside. As he looked around the room, he saw the faces of the people gathered there, each one filled with a sense of hope and desperation. He saw the image of the Emperor, his older brother, core matter, and felt a sense of trepidation wash over him. Slowly, T shuffled back, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer weight of what he had been told. I need a minute. I need to go. He stuttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Jada's face fell, her eyes filled with a sense of concern. T? She asked, her voice soft. But T was already turning, shuffling away from the room and the people gathered there. He felt like he was drowning, unable to process the sheer weight of what he had been told. He needed time to think, to process the revelation that he was so much more than a simple mechanic alien from a distant world. As he disappeared into the hallway corridor, the room fell silent once more. Jada's eyes followed him, filled with a sense of concern and desperation. Wait, T! I didn't mean to... Scrap. Jada huffed, beginning to follow after the matter birth, leaving everyone in the room mixed, to say the least. Jada's voice echoed through the sterile corridors, a desperate plea against the cold, metallic backdrop. T! Hey, T! Where'd you go? She navigated the labyrinth hallways, feeling momentarily defeated. She'd been rambling. She knew it. The words tumbling out in a torrent of nervous energy that had scared him off. T! Please, I'm sorry. I overtalk sometimes. I didn't mean to overwhelm you. I got too excited. Her apology hung in the air, unanswered. Just as her hope began to dwindle, a faint, ethereal blue glow caught her eye. It emanated from a corridor ahead, barely visible amidst the dim rainbow lighting. The sign above the entrance read simply, Greenery. The door was partially open from below, a silent invitation, or rather a clumsy mistake, left by someone not wanting to be found, or fully knowing how the doors worked. T? She ventured, a question laced with nervousness, as she cautiously pushed the door inward, resulting in it folding up like the others. The scene that unfolded before her was a stark contrast to the sterile environment she had just left. The greenery was an enormous domed space, easily the size of a gymnasium. Lush, vibrant vegetation exploded in every direction, a riot of life salvaged from the darkness. The air hung heavy with humidity, and the scent of damp flora filled her nostrils. Lightning and glowing rain filtered through the dome's storm-streaked glass, casting an eerie yet compelling light upon the scene. Metal and glass structures, the remnants of the dome's construction, were partially obscured by climbing vines and vibrant blue and green foliage. A small water stream trickled along the periphery of the room, its gentle murmur adding to the serene atmosphere. And yet, there beside it, on a moss-covered bench near the water's edge, sat T. His shoulders were slumped, head bowed, lost in contemplation. T. Jada repeated softly, her voice barely carrying over the ambient sounds of the garden. She approached slowly, Her footsteps hushed on the damp plants. She then settled beside him upon the bench she was resting upon, a viewing spot for anyone who wished to enter the room could. T, I'm sorry, she repeated. T slowly lifted his head, his face a mask of stress. His eyes were red-rimmed, still glistening with unshed tears. You're fine, he mumbled, his gaze fixed on the foliage and the falling rain visible through the dome. Chida, I don't know what to think. He looked down at his hands, his fingers fidgeting nervously. What do you want me to say to all that? A few hours ago, I was a nobody. Now all of a sudden I'm... He paused, removing his worn cap and running a hand through his hair, the cool air offering a brief respite. I had always known I was something more than what I was back home. I always wanted to know. But to be honest... He stared down at his cap, twisting it in his hands. I don't exactly think I like the answer. I'm not a god, Jida, His voice trailed off, and a deep-seated sadness crept into his tone. I'm a nobody. Jida's brow furrowed with concern. She leaned forwards, gently placing a hand on his leg. She began, but he continued, his words tumbling out in a rush of raw emotion. I can't fight in a war. You saw me with that giant rancor-looking thing. I can't fight for the life of me. How am I supposed to help you guys when I can't even help myself? His voice cracked as tears finally began to spill down his cheeks. I can't do anything right. My whole life, I've been this stain that could never be washed away. I try and fail again and again. I can't sell the things I make. I can't keep a house paid up. I can't keep a job. Now all of a sudden I'm learning I was meant to be this higher powered being that was torn away from his purpose? What the hell do you expect me to do? He turned the fully faced Jida, his eyes pleading, almost sobbing. I can't help you. I can't do anything. I'm not the one you and your people need. Jida slowly raised her hands, a gesture that caused T to flinch. The movement triggered a memory, a flicker of past trauma that momentarily clouded his eyes. Jida noticed a flinch, her expression shifting to one of a profound sadness before quickly recovering. She then reached out again, cautiously, and this time, he allowed her to touch him. Gently, she wiped away his tears, then carefully pulled him into a hug. T stiffened for a moment, caught off guard. He couldn't remember the last time someone had held him like this. It had been so long. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been so upfront. It was foolish of me to believe you'd fully understand and be on board with what I just said. Jida murmured, pulling back slightly while keeping her arms wrapped around him. I don't know what you went through on whatever world you ended up within. But don't let those thoughts tear you down. She wiped another tear from his cheek. You simply being here is more than enough for everyone on this side. I know this is a lot to process, but we'll take it one step at a time. Her hands moved back to his, holding them firmly. I'll walk beside you. Whatever you want to do, I can train you. Everyone here can help you. We're allies here, all of us. We'll do whatever we can to make you feel at home in this situation. T paused, leaning down at their conjoined hands, absorbing her words. Could I go back and grab some stuff at my house? I was about to lose it anyway. He asked quietly. Unfortunately, core matter cast a spell to seal off portal ways from this dimension to others. People can get in like you did, but We can't get out once inside, Jada explained, her voice tinged with regret. So, you're saying that I'm stuck here? T asked, his voice barely a whisper. Unfortunately so, Jada confirmed, and a long silence settled between them, broken only by the gentle sounds of the garden and the rain. You know, on that world I was raised upon, there's a fictional character called Superman. He was an alien from another world who grew up on a farm, kind of like me. I related to that character growing up. In a way, I always thought I was destined for something greater like him, but I never imagined it would be to this magnitude. T began, finally meeting Jada's gaze once more. That character was a comfort for me in dark times growing up. T finished. You are so much more than whatever those on that planet did to you. You may not see it now, but you're the one our people have been waiting for, Jada said with a warm smile, leaning her forehead against T's, causing him to blush. What are you doing? He asked, startled. A head touch. In our culture, it's a showing of compassion, care, and understanding, Jada explained, gently rubbing her forehead against his. Doesn't it feel nice? She asked. Yeah, I guess it does, T replied, feeling a bit calmer, though still deeply on edge. Good. Listen, I'll be your guide through this world. We don't have to do training or anything like that until you feel ready. Just you being here will be the motivation we need to fight on. Your presence is enough as is. Okay? Jada said, raising her hand to cup T's cheek. Then she took his hat and plopped it back upon his head, adjusting it and nodding with a giggle. Okay. I'll think on the training thing, because I'm still freaking out on the inside. T replied softly, his heart responding to the warmth of her touch. Even though it's not what I was expecting. Thanks for giving me an answer after all these years. T thanked. Of course, it was long overdue by the looks of it. The weight of T's past hadn't vanished, but in this moment, surrounded by the vibrant life, the greenery, and the unwavering support in Jada's eyes, a tiny seed of hope began to sprout in his heart. A terrifying one, but something that made him think back to his boss's words. Perhaps his destiny truly did lie here as opposed to there, in this chaos of war.
Suddenly, and without warning, the mighty vessel lurched violently, sending T and Jada tumbling to the greenery floor. The two struggled to regain their footing, their bodies awkwardly intertwined as they stumbled. Jada's neat braids were now disheveled, her clothes now stained green, as she was the first to her feet. Ah! She cried, her voice echoing through the serene space. T, still catching his breath, wheezed and pushed his cap back upon his head. Ah! What was that? He stammered, his voice trembling with a mix of shock and confusion. Before either could formulate a theory, the ship's intercom system crackled to life, its voice cold and impersonal, jarring against the warmth of their shared moment. Warning, an ameliorated mothership is nearing the Star Slasher. Repeat, an ameliorated mothership is nearing the Star Slasher. Jada's face drained of color, her eyes widening in a flash of panic. On instinct, she seized T's arm, yanking him upright. Oh no. Oh no! She exclaimed, her voice trembling. Ameliorated mothership? T asked, his confusion deepening as Jada propelled him out of the greenery and into the bustling hallways. The corridors, moments before relatively quiet, were now a chaotic scene of activity. Dyad soldiers, their faces grim and determined, surged past them, hurrying to their battle stations. The hum of energy weapons being charged then filled the air, the noise a palpable sense of impending conflict permeating every corner of the ship. Jida, with swift stride, steered T towards his quarters. Waiting by the door already were Nock and Kot, their faces etched with worry. Kot, upon seeing them, immediately pressed Jet into T's hands. "They're here! They found us!" Nock, the yellow robot, exclaimed, his chirpy voice now laced with dread. Jida turned her attention to the robots, her expression grave and shallow. "How bad is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. As if in answer, the ship's lights began to flicker erratically, casting long, dancing shadows. A deafening war horn blared through the approaching ship outside, its piercing cry sending a jolt of fear through T's heart. "Scrapping heap!" Jida cursed, her voice sharp and urgent. "T, stay in your room and don't come out until someone gets you." She then shoved him inside, the mechanical door sliding shut behind him with a decisive hiss. What? Seriously?" T's eyes widened in alarm as he saw the door seal, leaving him alone with Jet, trapped within the confines of his room. "What the hell is going on?" T asked, his voice laced with fear as he began to pace anxiously around the small space. Jet, sensing his master's anxiety, replied in his typically calm and measured tone.
"It would seem we're under attack,"
he stated with a dumbfounded expression. "Well, yeah, obviously. Maybe mothership. God," T retorted, his voice shaking. His eyes darted around the room, his mind racing with unanswered questions and a growing sense of dread. The minutes stretched into an eternity as the ship continued to shudder and groan under the unseen assault. T tapped his foot, scratched his head, and waited, his eyes fixed on the sealed door. He had no idea how much time had passed. 10 minutes? An hour? The agonizing uncertainty was almost unbearable. From outside, he suddenly heard conflict arise. Gunshots, dark voices, screams. It immediately shut him up, as fear arose in his heart. Suddenly, a blinding flash of orange light filled the room, accompanied by a deafening explosion. A high-pitched alarm blared for a fleeting moment before abruptly cutting out, leaving only silence in its wake. Then, darkness. When T regained consciousness, the smell of smoke assaulted his senses. A wave of heat washed over him. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal and melting wires. His room was ablaze, the walls cracked and broken, exposing the ship's inner workings. He coughed, his lungs burning with each strained breath as he struggled to his feet. "Oh God! Oh God!" he exclaimed, his voice hoarse and raspy from the smoke inhalation. Jet, still clutched tightly in his hand, cried out in alarm.
"We've been hit! This isn't good! You must leave! The smoke will surely hurt your lungs!"
T didn't need to be told twice. Ignoring Jida's orders to stay put, and driven by an instinct for survival, he stumbled out of the room, his eyes streaming from the smoke, blurring his vision, but he pressed on, determined to escape the inferno. As he navigated the wreckage-strewn corridors, T called out for Jida, his voice desperate and cracking with emotion. But his pleas were only met with silence, a chilling addition to the chaos that had engulfed the ship. The craft that had once been a symbol of power and safety had become a deadly labyrinth, and he was lost within its burning heart. He moved cautiously, fanning the smoke away from his face, his heart pounding in his chest. In the distance, he thought he saw movement, a flicker of something amidst the smoke and flames. He froze, instinct warning him of danger. He quickly pressed himself against the wall, holding his breath. After what felt like an eternity, he soon convinced himself that the coast was clear. He cautiously moved onwards. T soon reached what was once the briefing room, now a scene of horrifying carnage. The bodies of fallen soldiers lay scattered across the floor, limbs twisted at unnatural angles, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. T's stomach churned, his mind reeling from the sheer brutality of the attack. "China!" he called out, his voice cracking with desperation. "China! Where are you?" This was bad, terribly bad. What happened? He cried inside, his voice echoing within his mind. Then, he saw him. A young soldier, a blue-skinned humanoid with dark hair, large pointed ears, and eyes that glowed with an unnatural green light. He was slumped against the wall, his body battered and bruised, his uniform torn and smudged with blood. Driven by a surge of empathy and a need to help, T rushed to his aid. "Hey! Hey!" T called out, trying to keep his voice steady despite the tremor of fear that ran through him. The soldier's eyes flickered, his gaze locking on the T's. His lips moved, forming words that were barely audible. "Matterbirth," he whispered, his eyes welling up with tears. "Hey, are you okay? Can I help you? What do you need me to do?" T asked, his voice laced with urgency. The soldier's gaze never wavered, his expression looking to turn into one of profound acceptance. "I'm sorry. There's nothing you can do. I feel that my time is growing near." He choked, his voice fading with each word. T felt a pang of despair, but the soldier's next words caught him by surprise. Here, take this. You'll need these more than me." With trembling hands, the soldier offered T a pistol-like device. Its metallic surface was cool to the touch. It felt heavy and solid in his grasp. Then, he presented a silver-blue lined plate-like device. T didn't understand its purpose until the soldier pressed it against his forehead. Instantly, the plate unfolded, molding itself into an artificially enhanced battle helmet that covered his face. T's eyes widened in awe as the helmet activated over his head, its visor clearing the smoke-filled air and displaying a heads-up display of complex data. "Whoa!" he exclaimed, feeling a sense of bewildered wonder. The soldier's eyes locked on the T's, his gaze burning with an unexpected intensity. "My lord, I understand you're scared. I know you fear the unknown of what you are," he began, his voice weak but resolute. "But please, for the sake of all those that are left, please, fight for them. They need you more than ever." His hands then slipped from T's grasp, refusing to grip back. Hey, breathe! You're gonna be okay. You hear me? You're gonna make it out of here." T assured him, panic gripping his heart. "They need you. Every dyad needs you. Please. They can't win this war without you." The soldier gasped, his voice fading with each syllable, before finally expiring in a final breath. Hey, shit! T gasped, recoiling in shock. "Oh my god, Christ! My Christ!" He babbled, the soldier's words echoing in his mind. It was as if the world was crumbling around him, everything falling apart, crumbling.
"I'm sorry, my creator.
Jeb began, making T flinch. "I know! God, I know!" he replied, feeling a strange hum resonating from his horns.
We must find Jida and fast. The flames are growing heavier."
The phone exclaimed, its voice laced with newfound urgency. T glanced through his visor, unable to decipher the ancient language scrolling across his display. "God, please, oh God, please." T prayed as he barged through the burning ruins once more,
the soldier's final plea ringing in his ears like a broken record. With one hard hit, T slammed open an exit hatch and climbed out of the ship's depths through a ladder. He coughed, the respirators in his mask struggling to filter the smoky air. He hauled himself onto the rain-slicked deck of the Dyad ship. The wind felt like a biting lash against his exposed limbs. The storm had grown violent. The vessel, colossal yet unfamiliar, seemed to resemble an aircraft carrier, only gargantuan and alien. Rows of sleek crafts sat silent and menacing upon the long runway, while watchtower-like structures along the perimeter spewed out angry flames. "China!" T shouted, his voice swallowed by the wind and rain as he began to sprint along the deck. A knot of dread began to tighten in his stomach. Where was everyone? The deck was deserted, devoid of friendly soldiers or enemy combatants. The silence, punctuated only by the howling wind and crackling fire, was more terrifying than any battle cry. Where had they all gone?
Whoa! Creator, look at that!
Jed's voice, tinged with awe and apprehension, pierced through the storm. T followed his gaze upwards. Looming above, partially obscured by swirling clouds, was another craft, impossibly large, dwarfing the vessel they currently occupied. The realization struck him with the force of a physical blow. An air battle. It was raging above them, explaining the eerie emptiness of the deck. Either that, or the fight had spilled over to the larger craft itself. Not good. None of this is good. T stammered as a frigid chill snaked its way down his spine.
I would recommend we go back in, but it would appear the flames have grown too heavy.
Jet replied, his tone grim. T nervously adjusted his cap, the rain plastering it to his forehead. Then, they heard it. From the depths of the ship, a cacophony of horrors erupted. Strangled screams, the faint bursts of weaponry, the sickening whispers of blades meeting flesh. T stumbled backwards, his feet slipping on the rain-soaked deck. He stared down into the runway of the ship, tension coiling tighter and tighter around his heart. The noises were indescribable. A grotesque blend of gurgling and mechanical whirring, like some unholy blender at work. What the hell is going on down there? He breathed, his voice trembling. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. One thud, two thuds. Each impact sent a tremor vibrating up his legs, knocking him off balance. Instinctively, T raised his weapon, its weight a strained resistance against his shaking hands. His chest constricted, his breath coming in as sharp, ragged gasps as the thuds grew closer and more insistent. Then with a roar that ripped through the storm, the ground exploded upwards, spewing metal and fire into the night sky. The force of the explosion sent T hurtling backwards, like a rag doll tossed aside. He landed hard, the rain-slicked metal of the carrier unforgiving against his body. He skidded between resting alien crafts, the harsh edges threatening to tear through his already battered outfit. Gasping, he pushed himself up as the smell of burning metal filled his nostrils. He stared at the gaping hole he had just been standing near, now a fiery maw spewing smoke and molten debris into the storm. From the heart of the inferno, something began to rise. It was a spine. A monstrous metallic construct coiling upwards from the depths below. Connected to it, a device pulsed with an inner light, a swirling vortex of purple energy powering 5 long, wickedly sharp blades. They rotated at impossible speeds, a mesmerizing, terrifying display of lethal engineering. As the spine extended, the blades shifted, morphing into a grotesque, articulated claw. This metallic hand swiftly latched onto the edge of the hole, anchoring the monstrous appendage as it hoisted something else from the fire. A figure came into view.
They were tall and undeniably female. She wore a conical hat of steel ruby red, adorned with a chaotic tapestry of colors, purples, blues, magentas, and reds, woven into an intricate dress design. Her clothing was a patchwork of warrior and ninja styles, however, ripped and stained. Shades of purple and blue veins made up her skin, being a stark contrast to the greasy lavender locks of hair that fell across her masked face. Armored segments reinforced her form. A left shoulder shield and a brace protected her arm, while her right side was partially exposed, revealing a scarred arm and a powerfully built chest beneath layered wrappings. Her feet and legs were encased in long, sharp heels, their blue and purple metal glinting ominously in the rain. On her left breastplate, etched into the metal, was that familiar crest that T began to see constantly now. Then, their eyes met. The light in hers burned a blood red, pinning him in place like a specimen on a board. A wave of palpable pressure washed over T, a sensation of pure, unadulterated menace. The woman stepped down, the rain plastering her tattered garments to her body. With terrifying grace, she manipulated the metal spine, what T now realized to be a tail, by retracting the claw back into its original bladed form. The tail both swayed and dragged behind her as she began to advance, each click of her sharp heels echoing across the rain-swept deck. Sparks of purple energy danced where the blades scraped against the concrete plating, becoming a visual promise of pain to come. Well, well, well. Her voice was a low, guttural rasp, laced with malice and a hint of amusement. What do we have here? Another survivor left behind. You aren't even properly armored. How embarrassing. T scrambled to his feet, his legs trembling. He fumbled with his blaster, the heavy weight of it suddenly a burden in his shaking hands. Hey, stop! Don't make me use this, please! His voice was thin, barely audible above the wind. Stop moving closer, please! She didn't falter. Her crimson eyes were fixed upon T, like a predator sizing up its prey. Please, I don't want to shoot! T bellowed, his voice cracking. With no other option, he squeezed his eyes shut and pulled the trigger. The weapon exploded in his hands. The blaster, due to an inexperienced grip, flew from his hands, vanishing into the stormy darkness. A stray spark, the last vestige of the weapon, tinked harmlessly off the woman's shoulder plate. Her movement stilled for a moment, her gaze flickering down to the insignificant scratch on her armor, then back to T. A slow, predatory smile spread behind her mask, her eyes narrowing with cruel amusement. Ha! That was oddly adorable. Her words dripped with disdain. Then, with a sudden, alarming swiftness, she deployed 2 elaborate war fans from her wrists. The metal structures unfolded with a snap, revealing a network of razor-sharp blades interwoven with vibrant blue fabric. Simultaneously, the blades on her tail worked to life, fanning out and spinning at a feverish pace. A purple blur that promised nothing but destruction.
Fucking run, man!
Jed's voice shrieked, filled with terror as the figure swung her tail, the movement a blur of deadly grace. It sliced through the air above T's head, causing displaced wind to whip at his mask. The tail connected with brutal force against a nearby fighter craft, cleaving it in two with a thunderous roar that instantly transformed it into an inferno. Terror lent wings to T's feet. He screamed, a primal response to the imminent danger. He spun on his heel, legs pumping as he fled towards the craft's upper sectors. He risked a glance over his shoulder, and his blood ran cold. The attacker emerged from the heart of the explosion, seemingly unscathed. Flames licked at her silhouette, painting her in an infernal glow. But through it all, she moved with unsettling calmness. Each step was a deliberate strut, her hips swaying with a predatory grace that matched the carnage she left in her wake. Her tail continued its devastating sweep, tearing through metal and sparking explosions with every casual flick.
Where are you going, little rebel?
Her voice, cold and calculated, cut through the flames of the battle.
Too afraid to fight?
Before T could even formulate a reply, the woman launched herself upwards, a leap of impossible height and agility. T stumbled to a halt, fear seizing him like a deer in headlights. He watched in horror as she descended, landing with a hard thud directly in his path. He scrambled backwards, desperation fueling his clumsy evasions as he dodged the flashing fan blades in her grasp. The blades hung with a contained energy, leaving trails of shimmering blue heat in the air. They were aimed at his throat. Wait! T blurted, pleading for a conversation that would never come. The woman merely giggled, a high-pitched, chilling sound that amplified his fear. With a lightning-fast movement, she slashed upwards with a fan blade. Pain exploded across T's chest as the weapon sliced through his new clothes, leaving a deep gash. A spray of blue blood erupted from the wound. He staggered backwards, clutching at the burning pain. Before he could regain his footing, the woman's tail lashed out, slamming into him with an almost bone-snapping force. He flew backwards, sprawling onto the metal deck.
So precious. So weak. The clumsiest of them all thus far.
She cackled, her voice dripping with contempt. With a sickening thud, her tail then slammed down, the blades piercing through T's right leg. Ah! A howl of agony ripped from his throat. Tears stung his eyes as he was hoisted upside down, his body dangling limply from her tail, his hat nearly slipping off. She brought him close, her face inches from his masked visage. Retracting her fans, she leaned closer, her eyes narrowed with curiosity. She wanted to see his fear, to savor his despair. With a cruel smile, she reached out and tore at the metal guard that concealed his face.
Let's get a look at that petrified little face before I tear it apart.
She hissed, ripping the mask away with brutal efficiency. As the metal clattered to the deck, her sinister glare faltered. Shock placed the malice in her eyes. T, his face exposed and raw with fear, stared back at her.
What?
She stammered, leaning in for a closer look.
Are you a...
The roar of a jet engine shattered the confused silence. Both the woman and T snapped their heads towards the side. A sleek, golden jet, a symbol of hope in the storm, descended from the churning sky. Leaping from the wing with effortless grace was Jida, donned back in her armor, her sword shimmering in the dim light. With a defiant war cry, she plunged towards the enemy. The force of her landing sent T and the tail-bladed woman sprawling. T landed hard, sliding across the slick rain-swept deck. He landed beside the torn-away helmet, which had already reverted back into its featureless metal slab. He gripped his leg, a fresh wave of agony washing over him. He then looked up, his vision blurring, and watched as the two women clashed, their blades met in a shower of sparks. Fading in and out of consciousness, T could faintly hear Jet's frantic calls. He groaned, pushing himself to a sitting position. He snagged his little buddy from the ground and then his helmet slab. He looked down at his punctured leg, seeing it bleed upon the water.
Give me a break.
He groaned as the battle raged on, a blur of motion and deadly grace. The two women moved with impossible speed, their weapons weaving a deadly dance. He could faintly hear snippets of their conversation.
You're a monster!
Jida's voice, tight with fury.
Weak little rat!
The enemy snarled.
This ends tonight, Scorch!
Jida retorted once more. Then, everything went silent. With a brutal slash, the enemy slammed Jida to the ground with her tail. She rolled, struggling to regain her footing. The enemy's tail snapped back around, beginning to spin for a lethal killing blow. No! He gasped, seeing Jaida's desperate struggle. No! He pushed himself to his feet. Pain lanced through his leg, a searing fire that threatened to consume him. But he couldn't stay down. He had to help Jaida. He had to fight. Jaida! He screamed, lunging forwards, placing himself between her and the descending purple blades. As the tail came down, something extraordinary happened. A brilliant flash of blue energy erupted from T's outstretched arm. The spinning blades of the tail met the energy and imploded. The upper half of the tail shattered into a shower of lavender sparks. The enemy was thrown backwards with a shout, landing hard on the already damaged craft. Both Jaida and the enemy stared, wide-eyed, at T. For a sun-shaped energy shield, emanating a mesmerizing crystal blue glow, radiated from his arm. The shield was a large and beautiful form, with its sharp edges, ancient text, and crest symbol of unity in its center. T's eyes glowed a sapphire blue, his horns and inner veins pulsating the same color. It was magnificent, a sign of his true abilities. Whoa! That's new. He breathed, completely baffled by his own power. Yes! Yes! Jaida cried, scrambling to her feet and using T to steady herself. By the gods, it is. The enemy groaned, watching as the vessel began to tilt precariously. That was... Did you see that? That was insane! He exclaimed as his shield vanished. Nodding with a smirk, Jaida wrapped an arm around his waist, noticing too that their ship was going down. You're so much more than you realize, Blue, she said, giving T a nickname that he found rather nice. A smaller ally ship then swooped down towards them. As it did, Jaida scowled at the downed enemy, flipped her off, then swung her sword to the side of the arriving golden craft. Hang on! She yelled as she and T were pulled to safety. Several other smaller dyad ships also began fleeing the scene, those that had survived. The enemy slowly rose to her feet, watching as the large ship from her side descended to retrieve her. She glanced at her shattered tail, blue embers still flickering. She couldn't believe what she had seen. She couldn't imagine how... Her mind halted. A terrifying realization dawned upon her. Oh, Shelzen. She huffed with dread. She then boarded the approaching craft. As it took off, the mighty dyad vessel, the Star Slasher, crashed into the world below, leaving another victory in the hands of the Ameliorites, but a worrisome future that needed to be discussed as soon as possible. As the sun began to rise, the perpetual storm that had engulfed the world raged on as a ravenous beast, its fury hammering against the colossal tree that stood defiant at the heart of everything. Rain lashed down, looking like a weeping current obscuring the towering structures that clustered around the ancient giant. Yet, the tree endured. Its roots were sunk deep in the Salvaheim, its branches reaching towards the sky that was swallowed by the storm's wrath. Before it, an obsidian royal tower pulsed with a malevolent dark orange energy. This was a stark contrast to the gleaming, darkened chrome and glass of the surrounding cityscape. Within the tower's shadowed depths, the sharp-tailed warrior ascended a massive staircase. Her footsteps echoed and screamed in the oppressive silence. Clack, clack, clack. Each step was a hefty beat against the rising anxiety thrumming in her veins. Upon reaching the top, she paused before a pair of imposing metal doors. Their surfaces were cold and unyielding under her hands. The weight of the information she now carried pressed down on her, feeling like a burden far heavier than any blade or armor she had ever owned. Raising her hand, she gave 3 sharp, decisive knocks that reverberated through the stairwell, cutting through the silence like a crack of thunder. Without a word, the doors responded, groaning as they shifted apart, folding silently into the walls. The room they revealed was a stark contrast to the grim exterior of the tower. A grand throne room sat, bathed in warm flame-colored hues from the resting amber lights. Black marble columns, intricately carved with chiseled history, supported soaring archways that seemed to disappear into the shadows high above. The storm's light filtered in through large, arched, city-viewing windows along the back wall, casting swirling patterns on the polished floor. A Gothic chandelier hung suspended from the high ceiling, its many crystal arms holding glowing orbs that cast a soft, flickering glow. There was even a rich, orange carpet, with decorative borders encircling the room, leading to where the throne stood. Above, potted plants hung suspended from the ceiling on chains, their leaves glowing orange and dripping faintly, adding a touch of strange serenity to the grand room. The throne itself was crafted from the same dark material as the room's decor, sat at the center of the carpet like a silent eye. "My lord," the warrior began, her voice barely a whisper in the vast space. She felt small, insignificant, despite her training and reputation. She then noticed them. 2 figures stood silhouetted against the rain-streaked windows, overlooking the city, their forms partially obscured by shadow.
"Evelyn, you requested an emergency gathering. This had better be important."
It was Core Matter and Sika. He spoke first, his voice a low rumble that resonated with a power that vibrated through the very floor he stood upon. The words weren't spoken as a question, but as a demand. Both figures turned, their gazes fixing upon the warrior. She could feel the weight of their expectations bearing down on her, the pressure to justify this intrusion upon their time. "My lords, I assure you that this is far more important than either of you realize," Evelyn replied, her voice gaining strength despite her apprehension.
"Wouldn't be the first time you've said such blasphemy. This better be good, you dagger-tailed freak."
A new voice boomed, laced with annoyance and a hint of sadistic amusement. Accompanying the words were sharp, metallic clanking sounds. Looking up, the trio saw who had been speaking. Matching the sound was a hulking figure that descended from the ceiling, clinging to the wall like a grotesque spider. He was a being of horrifying contrast, half ameliorated, half machine. He had pale teal skin that was crisscrossed with dark, pulsing veins that throbbed with an unwholesome light. They stretched over a massive, muscular frame. His head, humanoid with pointed elf ears, sported 4 large, arcing horns that looked like dimmed emeralds. His right arm was a more normal, powerful, and defined shape. His left, and the rest of his body, it was a mechanical nightmare. The limb was a mass of sharp edges and glowing green hydraulics, a tangle of pistons, metal plates, and wires, culminating in a clawed hand that dripped with what looked like a glowing green toxin. Below the waist, 4 massive, bulky robotic spider legs emerged from his torso, each joint clad with thick steel plating, gold rims, and green paint. They hissed and sputtered as he finally landed, the impact shaking the room slightly. In the light, his face was revealed. Small, beady eyes glowed with an inner malice, and a scarred mouth twisted into a cruel smile, revealing rows of yellow teeth. "Since when were you ever one for official meetings, Atlas? I thought you once told me you'd rather lose your legs 6 times over than listen to a briefing," Evelyn retorted, attempting to diffuse the tension with a sharp mental jab. She knew baiting him was risky, but his predictable aggression was a familiar comfort, oddly enough. He was a reluctant partner in the war. The large Ameliorite smirked, a predatory glint glowing within his eyes.
Talk to me like that again, and you won't even have a tail to be repaired, sweetheart.
Atlas snarled with a clamp in his clawed hand, his voice a low growl that promised pain. His mechanical spider legs then shifted restlessly, eager to unleash their power.
Silence, children. Must you always act this way during such circumstances?
Another voice echoed, low and ethereal, like a sigh of a lost soul. The shadows around Atlas and Evelyn suddenly lengthened, twisting and coalescing into something darker, something almost ancient by appearance. Black and red smoke billowed forth, obscuring the already dim light as a figure materialized from the floor, rising like a specter from the depths of hell. First, a cloak of deep red appeared, concealing the soul within. Then, a single massive eye of mystical red energy flared open in front of the shadow's head, casting a dim, unsettling glow upon those nearby.
It is rather embarrassing.
The figure finished, resembling a ghost come to life. Talos, glad you could join us. Sika greeted, stepping forwards with Kor, her voice smooth and carefully controlled. Because Evelyn here seems rather insistent. All eyes turned to the warrior with the broken tail, the weight of their combined gazes almost unbearable.
Speak. What has happened that requires us all to be present for a mere hearing?
Kor commanded. The amusement had vanished, replaced by a cold, steely edge. Evelyn walked forwards, raising her severed tail like a grotesque offering. My lord, I don't know how to even begin to deliver this information to you. Evelyn began. The silence in the room was now absolute, the only sound being the crackling of the storm outside. I encountered something that shouldn't be possible. She then clicked the side of her mask, projecting a red hologram from the center plate. The image shimmered, resolving into a clear picture of the Matterbirth. T, standing defiant with his energy shield raised, his face set in a grim determination. The Matterbirth you banished. He has returned. Silence descended, thick and heavy, almost suffocating. Kor seemed frozen, his face shifting subtly, betraying a flicker of shock that he quickly masked. All eyes were on him, studying his reaction. His hand began to twitch, each finger fluttering erratically as if struck by an electric current.
He's returned.
The words were barely audible, a whisper of disbelief that hung in the air.
He's back. He's back.
Kor gave a twitchy head tilt, emanating a crack from his neck that echoed unnervingly in the silent room.
How did he find his way back to Salvaheim?
Kor's question hung in the air, unanswered and ominous. The Ameliorite higher-ups stood vigilant, watching their leader with a careful intensity. I don't know, sir. I wasn't able to get anything. He blew my tail to bits and escaped with other rebels who were unable to be captured. Evelyn replied, her voice apologetic. Kor inhaled sharply, the sound like a hiss of escaping steam.
Everybody out!
His voice had returned to its normal, darkened pitch, but held a new edge, a dangerous undercut that sent shivers down Evelyn's spine.
Out, now!
He repeated, his eyes beginning to burn with a hellish orange light. My love, if we could just... Sika began, her hand reaching out towards him, but Kor cut her off, his composure began to fray.
Sika, I said everyone!
He snapped, his tone rising, the threat in his voice unmistakable.
Master, I recommend that you...
Talos tried to interject, his spectral form flickering nervously, but Kor's patience had shattered.
Get out!
He roared with dark energy flaring around him. Smoke curled from his mouth, his veins pulsed with fire beneath his skin, his voice shaking the room, rattling the windows. The occupants scrambled to obey, fleeing the room with uncharacteristic haste. As the door sealed shut with a resounding clang, Kor stood alone, his fists clenched in barely contained rage. The room around him began to tremble, responding to his inner turmoil. Smaller objects rattled and shook, then began to shatter, succumbing to raw power radiating from him. Hanging plant pots exploded, scattering soil and debris across the pristine carpet. Royal trinkets and items of immense value shattered on the shelves, reduced to worthless fragments. Even a painting of an old Matterbirth, an ancient ancestor, burned the ash from a flame that ignited upon it. The air crackled with telekinetic rage, a manifestation of Kor's inner storm. His eyes burned pure orange, the fires of hell reflected in their depths. Raw, dark matter rage coursed through him, threatening to consume him entirely. He wanted to tear the room apart, destroy everything in his path. How is this possible? How could he still be alive? He thought back to the image of the figure in the hat, the mocking glint in his blue eyes. How could he... Father? A small voice cut through his fury, a fragile melody amidst the cacophony of his rage. Kor whirled around, his burning gaze searching the room, seeking the source of the sound. There, peeking out from behind one of the grand pillars, was a little girl. No older than 10, she was thin and frail, her features delicate and innocent. She was another humanoid with pointed elf ears. Her skin was a pale lavender color, matched by a fading yellow triangle birthmark on her forehead. 2 small dark horns protruded from her head, barely visible beneath a tangled mess of matted, gray blonde hair. Her attire was simple and worn, a faded purple and yellow striped gown with the world symbol stitched onto it. A simple pale lavender skirt dragged down to her legs, ending with old socks that completed the outfit. Her wide eyes were gentle and filled with a burning curiosity. She shuffled in the view, unsteady on her feet, her small frame trembling, almost sickly. Father, are you okay? She asked, her voice hushed and a little scared. It was filled with a genuine concern that pierced through the rage. A concern not for him, but more so for herself.
Joby, my child.
Kor replied, the rage in his eyes slowly dimming, the orange glow receding. He took a deep breath, struggling to regain control.
How did you get in here?
He asked sternly, his face softening slightly. I was exploring. I found a hole in the wall to this room. I overheard you shouting and wanted to see if you were okay. She admitted, her voice barely a whisper, causing the Emperor to snarl softly under his breath.
I'm fine. Go back to your room,
Kor commanded, his rage subsiding slowly, replaced by a bone-deep weariness.
now.
The girl backed away nervously, shuffling towards the door while her eyes remained fixed on him. As she left, Kor turned back to the large windows, watching as the rain lashed against the glass, blurring the city lights into a hazy glow.
He's come home,
he muttered to himself, the words heavy with dread. He clenched his jaw, his eyes hardening with a grim resolve. He had banished him once, and he could do it again. Perhaps even something more lethal. Kor took a long, deep, calculating breath. The storm within him slowly dimmed into a cold, unwavering purpose. The war's game had changed in an odd favor, but like many times before, he would be ready.
He's home.
Kor said one last time, as the glass slightly cracked from his glare alone.